The Council of Species sat in stunned silence as they watched the recording for the third time. On the massive viewing screen, a single human soldier stood against 5 armed Ravager warriors, each twice his size and covered in natural armor. What happened next had shaken the galaxy's understanding of warfare forever. The human, who would later be identified as Private James Miller, didn't retreat. He didn't call for backup. Instead, he did something that no other species in the galaxy would have considered. He charged straight at them. "This can't be real," whispered High Commander Root, his leaf-like appendages trembling. "No rational being would engage in such. But that's exactly why humans are different," interrupted General Stone, the first human representative to the Galactic Military Council. "We don't always do what's rational. We do what's necessary." The recording continued to play. Miller's combat suit, primitive by galactic standards, sparked with hits from Ravager energy weapons. Yet he kept moving, closing the distance that the Ravagers desperately tried to maintain. The aliens had evolved as long-range hunters, their entire military doctrine built around striking from afar. They had never encountered a species that would willingly enter close combat. That was their first mistake. The second mistake was assuming that human combat suits were as fragile as those used by other species. Decades of warfare on Earth had taught humans to build their equipment to last. While more advanced alien armor focused on deflecting energy weapons, human suits were designed to absorb punishment from all types of attacks. Miller crashed into the first Ravager like a battering ram. The alien, despite its superior size and strength, had no close combat training to fall back on. It fell, and Miller's plasma knife found the gap in its natural armor that protected its breathing apparatus. One down. The other Ravagers scattered, trying to restore their preferred fighting distance. But Miller had studied their movement patterns. Humans might have been new to galactic warfare, but they were quick studies. He threw his last sonic grenade, not at the Ravagers, but at the rocky ground between them. The alien-sensitive hearing, evolved for hunting, became their weakness. They stumbled, disoriented. "Look at the efficiency of movement," General Stone commented, pointing at Miller's fluid actions. "Every human soldier learns combat techniques passed down through thousands of years of Earth's martial arts. We don't just train them to use weapons, we train them to be weapons." The council members watched as Miller systematically eliminated the remaining Ravagers. He used their own size against them, targeted weak points that human analysts had identified, and most importantly, never stopped moving. The entire fight lasted less than 3 minutes. "But this is just one exceptional warrior," protested Ambassador Glow, her bioluminescent patterns showing clear distress. "Surely this isn't representative of all humans?" General Stone smiled, though there was no humor in it. Private Miller scored in the bottom 30% of his close combat class. "He's not exceptional, he's just well trained. What you're seeing is standard human combat doctrine. We call it aggressive adaptation." The recording ended with Miller securing the area and calling for evacuation of the civilians he'd been protecting. The council chamber remained silent for several long moments. "There's something else you should know," Stone added, his voice grave. "This incident? It's why the Ravagers finally agreed to peace talks. They lost 5 of their best warriors to what they thought was a lone, cornered human. Then they found out he was just a regular private. Not a special forces operator. Not an elite warrior. Just one of millions of soldiers trained to the same standard." High Commander Root's appendages had stopped trembling, replaced by a thoughtful stillness. "Your species has been fighting itself for most of its recorded history. We thought this made you primitive, dangerous, unready for galactic society. We were wrong. It made you the most formidable warriors in known space. Not the strongest," Stone corrected. "Not the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. But we've learned something that no other species has had to learn, how to keep fighting when everything rational says you should stop." How to win when you're outgunned, out-armored, and outnumbered. The council members looked at each other, a new understanding dawning in their alien eyes. Humans weren't just another species joining the galactic community. They were something entirely new, warriors who had turned their greatest weakness, their long history of conflict, into their greatest strength. 2 weeks after the council meeting, the galaxy received another demonstration of humanity's unique approach to warfare. This time, it wasn't a single soldier, but an entire human squad facing off against a swarm hive ship. The human vessel, the UES Thunder, was a small patrol ship with a crew of just 20. By all logical measurements, they should have retreated when their sensors detected the massive hive ship emerging from hyperspace. Instead, Captain Mark Wells made a decision that would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy. Status report, Wells commanded, his voice steady despite the enormous alien vessel filling their view screen. Hive ship's bio-readings suggest around 3,000 combat drones, Lieutenant Reed reported from her station. Their energy signature indicates they're charging weapons. The swarm was notorious for their overwhelming numbers and hive mind tactics. No species had ever succeeded in fighting them with anything less than a 3-to-1 numerical advantage. The Thunder's crew of 20 against 3,000 should have been suicide. Perfect, Wells smiled, surprising the alien liaison officer on his bridge. They're exactly where we want them. Initialize Operation Hornet's Nest. The alien liaison, Observer Blue, watched in confusion as the human crew began what seemed like a chaotic series of actions. The Thunder's engines powered down, making it appear disabled. Its weapon systems went dark. To any observer, it looked like the patrol ship was malfunctioning. Captain, Blue's translator struggled to convey his concern, your ship appears to be failing. Should we not call for reinforcements? Watch and learn, Wells replied, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Humans have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. The swarm took the bait. Their hive ship launched hundreds of drones, biological missiles of teeth and claws, streaming toward what they perceived as easy prey. The space around the Thunder filled with a living cloud of destruction. That's when Wells revealed humanity's latest innovation in space warfare. Deploy the WASP grid, he ordered. Dozens of tiny satellites, previously hidden by the Thunder's sensor shadow, activated simultaneously. Each one generated a small but intense gravitational field, creating a three-dimensional maze of crushing forces. The swarm drones, unable to adjust their trajectory quickly enough, flew straight into the trap. Hundreds of drones were instantly crushed or torn apart by the overlapping gravity fields. The rest found themselves divided into smaller, manageable groups by the WASP grid's layout. Humans didn't invent artificial gravity, Wells explained to the stunned Observer Blue. But we were the first to weaponize it on this scale. We took inspiration from Earth's insects, specifically, how spiders build webs. The Thunder's weapons came back online, methodically targeting the isolated groups of drones. What should have been an overwhelming swarm attack had turned into a carefully orchestrated killing ground. Impossible, Blue whispered. The energy requirements for such a grid should be massive? Wells finished for him. That's why we used the ship's shutdown to mask the power transfer to the satellites. Sometimes, appearing weak is the strongest strategy. The hive ship, realizing its drones were being systematically destroyed, attempted to retreat. But the Thunder's crew had anticipated this too. The WASP grid satellites realigned, creating a gravitational corridor that the larger ship couldn't escape. The thing about hive minds, Wells commented as he ordered the final phase of their attack, is that they're predictable. They always follow the most efficient path. Humans? We specialize in the unexpected. The Thunder launched its entire complement of missiles, not at the hive ship, but at precise points in space around it. The explosions disrupted the ship's bioelectric field, temporarily severing its connection to the remaining drones. Without central coordination, the mighty swarm vessel was just a big target. As the Thunder's final barrage struck the Hive ship's critical points, Observer Blue understood why humans were becoming legendary among the galaxy's military forces. It wasn't their technology, which was relatively basic. It wasn't their physical capabilities, which were average at best. It was their ability to turn apparent disadvantages into advantages, to think in ways that no Hive mind could predict, and to face overwhelming odds with not just courage, but innovation. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. The Galactic Academy of Military Science was hosting its annual Warfare Symposium when the truth about human endurance first became clear to the wider galaxy. The event was supposed to be a simple demonstration of various species' combat capabilities. It became a lesson that would reshape military doctrine across known space. Commander Jack Roberts stood before the gathered alien officials, his combat suit dusty from the previous demonstrations. Unlike the gleaming armor of other species representatives, the human suit looked plain, almost primitive. That was about to change. Today, Roberts announced, we'll show you why humans are called persistence predators on our homeworld. The testing ground was a harsh environment, a desert course stretching 30 kilometers through rough terrain under twin suns. The challenge was simple: reach the endpoint while facing automated defense systems and environmental hazards. Each species would send their best warrior. The mighty one of the Steel Clan went first, his cybernetic enhancements glinting in the sunlight. He made it 8 kilometers before his systems overheated. The swift hunter of the forest people covered 12 kilometers before dehydration forced her to stop. The Crystal Warrior, despite their advanced environmental shielding, surrendered at the 15-kilometer mark. Then it was Robert's turn. Your suit lacks advanced cooling, observed head researcher Gleam. The environmental conditions will overwhelm your systems within the first sector. Roberts smiled. Who said anything about systems? We're going to do this the old-fashioned way. To everyone's shock, he unsealed his combat suit, stepping out in what looked like primitive cloth gear, a uniform of moisture-wicking fabric, boots, and a small pack. This is how humans crossed deserts before we had technology, he explained. We don't need fancy systems. We just need water, nutrition, and the will to keep moving. The alien observers watched in disbelief as Roberts began what they assumed would be a short-lived attempt. Hour after hour passed, and he kept going. Where others had sprinted and exhausted themselves, he maintained a steady pace. When he encountered automated defenses, he didn't try to overpower them, he simply outlasted them until their power cells died. Impossible, muttered a representative of the machine empire. His core temperature should be lethal by now. That's the thing about humans, explained Dr. Wilson, the human medical observer. We're one of the few species that can regulate our temperature through sweating. We literally evolved to keep going when others would collapse from heat. As the first sun set and the second began to rise, Roberts was still moving. His uniform was soaked with sweat, his face covered in dust, but his pace never faltered. The alien observers watched their monitors in growing amazement as his vital signs remained stable. Notice how he's conserving water, Dr. Wilson continued. Humans can process water more efficiently than most species. We developed this ability over millions of years of evolution, chasing prey until they collapsed from exhaustion. 25 kilometers in, Roberts encountered the final challenge, a series of combat drones programmed to stop any approach. The aliens expected him to finally admit defeat, exhausted from his journey. Instead, they witnessed something remarkable. Roberts didn't try to fight the drones directly. He kept moving, forcing them to stay active, to keep tracking him. One by one, their power cells depleted. What the other species had tried to overcome with strength or technology, he defeated with sheer endurance. When Roberts crossed the finish line, nearly 10 hours after he started, the alien observers were silent. They had just witnessed something their species considered impossible, a warrior completing the course without relying on advanced technology or biological advantages. This is why humans are different, Robert said, taking a long drink from his canteen. Your species developed amazing technologies and biological adaptations. But humans? We learn to push through pain, to keep going when every instinct says to stop. We don't need fancy suits or genetic modifications. We just need the determination to take one more step, again and again, until we reach our goal. The implications were clear. How do you stop an enemy that doesn't know when to quit? How do you defeat warriors who see exhaustion as just another obstacle to overcome? The galaxy had yet another reason to fear human capabilities. Not because of their weapons or technology, but because of something far more fundamental, their unrelenting drive to continue when all others would have given up. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Defense Council was called after the Battle of Frost Moon. What happened there revealed yet another terrifying aspect of human warfare, their ability to turn extreme environments into advantages. Admiral Tom Harris stood before the council, his weathered face displaying the calm confidence that had become a trademark of human military leaders. Behind him, a hologram showed the frozen wasteland of Frost Moon, where his small force had just defeated an army 3 times their size. The Blade Empire thought they had us trapped, Harris began. They chose Frost Moon for their ambush because its surface temperature never rises above -70 degrees. Most species can't function in such cold without extensive support systems. The council members shuddered at the thought. Their own species had evolved in temperate environments, making extreme cold their greatest weakness. The Blade Empire had chosen well, or so they thought. What they didn't know, Harris continued, is that humans have been fighting in the cold since before we had electricity. We call it Arctic warfare. The hologram shifted to show human soldiers in white camouflage, moving through the brutal landscape like ghosts. Their gear looked simple compared to the Blade Empire's temperature-controlled battle suits, but it proved far more reliable in the harsh conditions. The Blade's technology failed them, explained Technical Advisor Green, her antennae twitching with interest. Their advanced systems couldn't handle the extreme cold. But the humans, they used something called layered insulation and passive heating techniques. The footage showed the battle's turning point. The Blade Empire's forces, their sophisticated weapons malfunctioning in the cold, found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to emerge from the blizzard itself. Human soldiers used the weather as cover, their white suits blending perfectly with the snowy landscape. We've been fighting in cold environments for thousands of years, Harris said. From Valley Forge to Stalingrad to the Third Arctic Campaign, humans learned to not just survive in the cold, but to thrive in it. The council watched as human soldiers demonstrated techniques that seemed impossible. They dug snow shelters in minutes, created water from ice without using power, and maintained their weapons using simple mechanical solutions that wouldn't freeze up. But the cold should have affected their reaction times, protested War Scholar Bright. Their biological functions should have slowed. Harris smiled. That's where human adaptability comes in. Our bodies can adjust to cold environments through a process we call cold acclimatization. My soldiers trained for months in Arctic conditions before this battle. Their bodies literally changed to handle the cold better. The hologram showed human snipers lying motionless in the snow for hours, their breathing controlled, their shots precise. It showed engineers repairing equipment with bare hands in temperatures that would freeze most species solid. It showed medics treating wounds without the benefit of advanced medical pods, using techniques perfected in Earth's harshest environments. The Blade Empire made a critical mistake, Harris continued. They assumed that because their technology was superior, victory was assured. They forgot that warfare isn't just about technology, it's about the warriors themselves. The final footage showed the surrender of the Blade Empire's forces. Their advanced armor had become frozen coffins, their energy weapons had failed, and their soldiers had never trained for fighting without their technology. Meanwhile, the humans had simply adapted, overcome, and won. This is perhaps the most frightening aspect of human warfare, noted Council leader Spark. You don't just fight in extreme conditions, you use them as weapons. We have a saying, Harris replied. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. We deliberately train in the worst conditions imaginable because we know that someday, those conditions might be the difference between victory and defeat. The council chambers fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans weren't just warriors who could fight in any environment, they were warriors who actively sought out the harshest conditions to gain tactical advantages. Every environmental challenge that would stop other species became just another tool in humanity's arsenal. The galaxy had learned yet another reason to fear human warriors. They weren't just fighting an enemy that could endure hardship, they were facing an enemy that turned hardship itself into a weapon. The Galactic War College's annual training exercise became a lesson in human ingenuity when a squad of human cadets demonstrated why their species' greatest strength wasn't their weapons or technology, it was their ability to improvise. The exercise was simple. Teams from different species were dropped onto a primitive planet with minimal equipment. Their goal was to cross 50 kilometers of wilderness and capture an objective. Each team had 3 days to complete the mission. Captain Bill West led the human team, carrying only basic supplies, rope, water purifiers, and simple tools. Other species teams brought portable energy shields, anti-gravity units, and advanced navigation systems. The alien observers expected the humans to be at a severe disadvantage. They couldn't have been more wrong. First rule of human warfare, West told his team as they surveyed the dense jungle before them. Work with what you have, not what you wish you had. The alien observers watched in fascination as the humans began gathering materials from their surroundings. They stripped bark from local trees to make waterproof containers. They fashioned spears and traps from branches and vines. Within hours, they had created a basic but effective arsenal from nothing but jungle materials. This is primitive, scoffed an observer from the Crystal Sphere Alliance. They're behaving like savages, not modern warriors. Professor Gray, the human military historian assigned to explain human tactics, smiled knowingly. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Watch what happens when they encounter their first obstacle. That obstacle came in the form of a raging river that cut across their path. The other teams used their anti-gravity units to float across or waited for their energy shields to recharge so they could wade through safely. The humans, however, had a different approach. Look at how they're studying the river, Professor Gray pointed out. They're not seeing an obstacle, they're seeing resources. The humans felled several trees, using them to create a basic raft. But what impressed the observers wasn't just the raft, it was how they used the river itself. Instead of fighting the current, they positioned their raft to let the river's flow carry them downstream while gradually crossing to the other side. They're using the obstacle itself as a tool, marveled one of the alien observers. They turned a barrier into a transport system. As the exercise continued, the humans demonstrated this ability again and again. When they needed to cross a valley, they created a zip line using their rope and local materials. When they needed to distract hostile wildlife, they crafted noise makers from hollow logs and pebbles. But the most impressive display of human improvisation was yet to come, Professor Gray narrated, showing footage from the final phase of the exercise. The objective was guarded by automated defense turrets. The other teams attempted to overcome them with their remaining technology. The humans, however, had noticed something during their journey. The planet's mud contained high levels of metallic sediment. Watch what they do with this information, Professor Gray said. The humans gathered large quantities of the mud, mixing it with water from their canteens. When the defensive turrets activated, the humans didn't try to destroy them. Instead, they covered the turret sensors with their metallic mud mixture, effectively blinding them. This is why humans are so dangerous in warfare, Professor Gray explained. They don't just use their equipment, they use everything around them. Every piece of terrain, every natural resource, even their obstacles become potential weapons or tools. The human team completed the exercise 12 hours ahead of schedule. They arrived at the objective covered in mud, carrying weapons made from sticks and stones, looking nothing like modern warriors. Yet they had outperformed teams with far superior technology. The galaxy fears human warriors not because they're the strongest or most advanced, Professor Gray concluded. They fear them because humans can create solutions from nothing. Give a human soldier a stick, and they'll figure out 50 ways to use it as a weapon. Give them a problem, and they'll find a way to turn that problem into an advantage. The War College added a new course that year, Human Improvised Warfare. It quickly became the most feared and respected training program in the galaxy. After all, how do you prepare to fight an enemy who can turn anything, literally anything, into a weapon? The Galactic Intelligence Summit was thrown into chaos when the truth about human psychological warfare came to light. It wasn't their weapons or tactics that terrified the assembled alien species, it was the revelation of how humans could wage war without firing a single shot. Director Mike Foster of Earth Strategic Operations stood before the summit, presenting what seemed like a simple case study. The screens behind him showed the bloodless conquest of the notorious space pirates who had terrorized the Orion Arm for decades. The pirates had better ships, better weapons, and complete control over their territory, Foster began. So we decided to defeat them without ever engaging in direct combat. The alien intelligence chiefs watched in growing unease as Foster explained the human approach to psychological warfare. Instead of attacking the pirates' strongholds, the humans had attacked something far more valuable, their reputation. First, we studied their culture, Foster explained. Pirates rely on fear and intimidation. Their power comes from their image as much as their weapons. So we decided to change that image. The operation started small. Human intelligence agents spread stories about pirates running from smaller ships. They created fake footage of pirate captains acting cowardly. They infiltrated pirate communications and caused confusion about who was really in charge. But that was just phase 1, Foster continued, his voice steady. The real work began when we introduced what we call paranoia warfare. The screens showed how human operatives had planted evidence suggesting that certain pirate leaders were secretly working with law enforcement. None of it was true, but that didn't matter. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Observe what happens to a fear-based organization when its members stop trusting each other, Foster said, displaying footage of pirate ships firing on their own allies. Senior analyst Glow of the Crystal Intelligence Service raised a glowing appendage. But surely they realized it was psychological manipulation? Foster smiled. That's the beauty of it. Once you plant the seeds of doubt, denials only make things worse. Every pirate leader who claimed they weren't a traitor was seen as trying too hard to prove their loyalty. The summit watched as the mighty pirate fleet tore itself apart from within. Ships refused to support each other. Crews mutinied against captains they suspected of betrayal. Supply lines broke down as no one trusted their trading partners. Humans have been perfecting psychological warfare for thousands of years, Foster explained. We learned long ago that the strongest fortress can be brought down by doubt, and the most powerful army can be defeated by fear. But the true masterpiece of the operation was yet to be revealed. Foster showed how human agents had created an entirely fictional, secret resistance within the pirate ranks. They left subtle clues about its existence, knowing the pirates would find them. The beauty of it was that there was no resistance, Foster said. But once the pirates believed it existed, they began seeing evidence of it everywhere. Every mechanical failure became sabotage. Every delayed message became proof of infiltration. They did our work for us. The alien intelligence chiefs sat in stunned silence as they realized the implications. The humans hadn't just defeated the pirates, they had made the pirates defeat themselves. Within 6 months, the most powerful pirate fleet in the galaxy had completely collapsed, Foster concluded. No battles. No casualties. Just the careful application of humanity's understanding of fear, doubt, and paranoia. War Master Blade of the Steel Empire spoke for the first time. This is not warfare. This is human warfare at its most sophisticated, Foster corrected. Why sacrifice lives and resources in battle when you can make your enemy surrender without a fight? The summit's final report would include a new classification for human military capabilities. Physical combat, technological warfare, and environmental adaptation were all dangerous enough. But this revelation about psychological warfare added a new dimension of terror. The most dangerous weapon humans possess, the report concluded, is their understanding of how minds work, not just the minds of their own species, but of any thinking being. They don't need to outgun you if they can make you outthink yourself. The galaxy had yet another reason to fear human warriors. Not just for their strength or skill, but for their ability to wage war on the battlefield of the mind itself. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Senate fell silent as Fleet Admiral Roy Cooper delivered humanity's response to the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced, the approaching Void Swarm, a species that had consumed 3 galaxies before setting its sights on ours. The combined fleets of every galactic civilization cannot stop them, Cooper stated, his voice firm despite the gravity of the situation. But that's exactly why humanity should lead this fight. We specialize in impossible situations. The holographic displays showed the enormous scale of the Void Swarm, billions of biomechanical ships approaching like a dark cloud of destruction. Traditional military analysis said victory was impossible. The humans said otherwise. For the past year, Cooper continued, we've been preparing something we call Project Legacy. It combines everything that makes human warriors unique, our adaptability, our endurance, our improvisation, our psychological warfare, and most importantly, our absolute refusal to accept defeat. The Senate watched as Cooper revealed humanity's master plan. It was audacious, borderline insane, and exactly what you'd expect from human warriors. The Void Swarm operates as a single consciousness, Cooper explained. Every previous civilization tried to fight it directly. We're going to do something different, we're going to teach it fear. The plan unfolded on the screens. Human ships would split the swarm into smaller segments using gravity weapons developed from their earlier WASP technology. Each isolated segment would then face a different aspect of human warfare. Some segments will face our Arctic warfare specialists, who will draw them into cold zones where their biomechanical systems fail, Cooper detailed. Others will encounter our improvisation experts, who will turn space debris into weapons. Our endurance teams will lead them on exhausting chases through asteroid fields, wearing them down hour after hour. But the masterstroke was how these tactics work together. Each segment of the swarm would experience a different type of defeat, and through their hive mind, the entire swarm would learn to fear human ingenuity. We've studied how their consciousness works, Cooper continued. They learn through shared experience. So we're going to give them experiences they've never had before, the experience of facing an enemy that turns their own strength against them. The Senate watched in amazement as simulations showed human ships executing maneuvers that seemed suicidal, only to trap swarm elements in carefully prepared killing zones. They saw plans for converting entire asteroids into weapons, using solar flares as cover, and transforming space itself into a battlefield that favored human adaptability over swarm numbers. But here's the key, Cooper revealed. We're not trying to destroy them all. We're trying to teach them something that every human warrior knows in their bones: sometimes, the cost of victory is too high. The final phase of the plan was pure human psychological warfare. Once the swarm learned to fear human tactics, the humans would offer them a choice: retreat, or face an enemy that would never stop adapting, never stop improvising, and never stop finding new ways to fight. "We've already prepared the message they'll receive through their hive mind," Cooper said, playing the transmission. "Every defeat they've experienced, every trap they've fallen into, every loss they've suffered will be nothing compared to what's coming if they continue this invasion." The Senate chamber erupted in discussion. The plan was unprecedented, using military tactics not just to win battles, but to fundamentally change an enemy's will to fight. Supreme Chancellor Light raised her crystalline form. "You speak of teaching an enemy that has destroyed entire galaxies to feel fear. How can you be certain this will work?" Cooper's response embodied everything that made humans the galaxy's ultimate warriors, because we're not just fighting for victory, we're fighting for survival. And in all of human history, across thousands of years of warfare, we've learned one absolute truth: there is nothing more dangerous than a species fighting for its survival. The Galactic Senate voted unanimously to accept the human plan. They had seen enough evidence of human military capabilities to know one thing for certain: if any species could make the impossible possible, it was humanity. As the Senate session ended, Cooper's final words echoed through the chamber: "The galaxy fears human warriors for good reason. We don't just fight wars, we redefine what warfare means. And now, we're going to teach that lesson to an enemy that thinks it cannot be defeated." The greatest test of humanity's warrior spirit was about to begin.